It's 1:47 a.m., your phone is still glowing in the dark, your eyes tired but your thumb moving anyway. Earlier today, you promised yourself you'd be different tonight. You meant it. And yet here you are again, trapped in a familiar moment that feels small but carries a heavy weight. Because this moment has repeated itself so many times that it has quietly reshaped how you see yourself. You don't think you lack dreams. You think you lack discipline. And that belief, more than procrastination, more than distraction, is what's been holding you back. Sheldon Howe's How to Be Disciplined starts here, not with routines or rules, but with the uncomfortable truth that most people were taught the wrong meaning of discipline from the very beginning. Chapter 1: What Discipline Really Is. Discipline has been misunderstood for so long that most people no longer see it as something they can build, only something they either have or don't. When you look at disciplined people, it's easy to assume they're wired differently, that they possess a kind of inner strength you were never given. Sheldon Howe begins by dismantling this belief, because it's one of the most damaging lies we accept without question. Discipline is not a personality trait, and it isn't about forcing yourself into pain. It's alignment. It's the ability to act in a way that matches the future you claim you want, even when your emotions argue against it. The reason discipline feels so personal is because every disciplined action quietly reshapes how you see yourself. Most people don't realize that discipline is built through trust, specifically self-trust. Every time you promise yourself you'll do something and follow through, even in a small way, you reinforce the belief that your word matters. And every time you break that promise, that belief weakens. Over time, this creates a dangerous cycle where people stop trying altogether, not because they lack ability, but because they no longer trust themselves to finish what they start. Discipline doesn't fail you in those moments. It simply reflects the relationship you've built with yourself. This is why discipline feels heavier than motivation. It forces you to confront whether you believe your future is worth discomfort today. What makes discipline difficult is that it rarely feels powerful in the moment. It feels boring, awkward, sometimes even pointless. There is no rush, no applause, no immediate reward. But discipline was never meant to feel exciting. It was meant to be consistent. Sheldon Howe emphasizes that discipline grows in repetition, not intensity. The small decisions you barely notice are the ones shaping your identity. Each time you choose to act despite resistance, you strengthen the part of yourself that can be relied upon. And slowly, without drama, discipline stops feeling like something you lack and starts becoming something you live. Chapter 2: Why Motivation Can't Save You. For most people, motivation feels like the missing piece. When energy is high and inspiration hits, everything seems possible. You make plans, set goals, imagine a better version of yourself, and truly believe this time will be different. But Sheldon Howe explains that motivation is emotional by nature, and emotions are unstable. They rise and fall depending on sleep, stress, mood, and circumstance. This is why relying on motivation creates a cycle of strong starts and quiet failures. When motivation disappears, as it always does, people assume discipline has failed them, when in reality, they simply built their system on something that was never meant to last. Disciplined people don't act because they feel inspired. They act because they decided earlier. This distinction changes everything. Decisions made in moments of clarity are far more reliable than feelings experienced in moments of emotion. Sheldon Howe emphasizes that discipline begins when you stop negotiating with your mood and start honoring your commitments regardless of how you feel in the moment. Action, not motivation, is what creates forward movement. And often, motivation follows action, not the other way around. Waiting to feel ready is how most people remain stuck, endlessly preparing but never becoming. The uncomfortable truth is that discipline requires acting while resistance is present, not absent. There will always be reasons to delay, to rest, to scroll, to start tomorrow. Discipline doesn't eliminate those urges. It simply refuses to let them decide. Over time, this rewires your relationship with effort. You stop asking yourself whether you feel like doing something and start asking whether it aligns with the person you're trying to become. And once that shift happens, consistency no longer depends on motivation. It depends on identity. Chapter 3: The Hidden Root of Procrastination. Procrastination is often mistaken for laziness, but Sheldon Howe makes it clear that it has very little to do with work ethic and everything to do with emotion. You don't avoid tasks because you can't do them. You avoid them because starting forces you to feel something uncomfortable. Uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not doing it perfectly, or even fear of realizing you've waited too long. In those moments, your brain isn't trying to sabotage you, it's trying to protect you. It looks for relief, and it finds it in distractions that offer quick comfort without effort. This is why procrastination feels automatic, and why willpower alone rarely defeats it. The mistake most people make is trying to overpower procrastination with pressure. They tell themselves they need to work harder, focus longer, or force productivity. But pressure only increases emotional resistance. Sheldon Howe explains that the real solution is to reduce the emotional weight of the task, not increase the intensity of effort. When a task feels overwhelming, your mind shuts down. When it feels manageable, your mind opens up. This is why shrinking tasks works. 1 sentence. 1 email. 5 minutes. Discipline begins the moment the task no longer feels threatening. Momentum is the quiet force that changes everything. Once movement starts, the emotional resistance that caused procrastination begins to dissolve. Confidence doesn't appear before action, it forms after it. Sheldon Howe emphasizes that you don't need to feel capable to begin. You become capable by beginning. Each small action builds proof that you can move forward even when discomfort is present. And over time, procrastination loses its power, not because you've eliminated fear, but because you've learned how to move despite it. Chapter 4: How Habits Build Discipline Quietly. Most people believe their lives are shaped by big decisions, but Sheldon Howe explains that it's the small, repeated behaviors that quietly determine who we become. Goals create direction, but habits create reality. When behavior depends on constant decision-making, discipline quickly collapses under pressure. This is why people feel exhausted trying to stay disciplined. They're asking willpower to do work it was never designed to do. Habits remove friction. They turn effort into routine and routine into identity. Discipline becomes easier not because you've become stronger, but because you've stopped relying on strength alone. The biggest mistake people make with habits is trying to change everything at once. They aim for dramatic transformation instead of sustainable consistency. Sheldon Howe emphasizes that habits must be small enough to succeed on your worst days, not your best ones. When habits feel easy, people underestimate their impact. But over time, these small actions compound quietly, reshaping behavior without resistance. Each completed habit reinforces self-trust, and that trust becomes the foundation for bigger change. Progress doesn't announce itself, it accumulates. As habits take root, something important shifts. Discipline no longer feels like something you force, it feels like something that carries you. Your environment, routines, and systems begin to support your intentions instead of competing with them. On difficult days, habits keep you moving even when motivation disappears. Sheldon Howe shows that this is where real freedom begins, not in doing whatever you want, but in building a structure that protects your future self from momentary weakness. Over time, discipline fades into the background, and consistency becomes part of who you are. Chapter 5: Discipline as Self-Respect. At its deepest level, discipline has very little to do with productivity and everything to do with how you value yourself. Sheldon Howe reframes discipline as an act of self-respect, the daily decision to take your own promises seriously. Every time you say you'll do something and follow through, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient, you send yourself a powerful message: I matter. And every time you don't, the opposite message quietly sinks in. This is why discipline affects confidence so profoundly. Confidence isn't built by success alone, It's built by reliability, by becoming someone you can count on. One of the most damaging myths about discipline is that it requires perfection. In reality, failure is unavoidable. You will miss days, you will break routines, you will fall back into old habits. Sheldon Howe emphasizes that disciplined people aren't those who never fail, they're the ones who return. They don't allow one mistake to become an identity. Instead of quitting after a setback, they reset and continue. Discipline, in this sense, isn't about never falling down. It's about refusing to stay down. This mindset transforms failure from a stopping point into a temporary pause. Over time, discipline reshapes not just what you do, but who you believe you are. When you consistently act in alignment with your values, even in small ways, your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. Sheldon Howe makes it clear that discipline isn't meant to make life harder, it's meant to make your future lighter. By honoring your commitments today, you protect the person you're becoming tomorrow. And in that sense, discipline is not a restriction. It's freedom earned through self-respect. Conclusion. As we reach the end of this journey through Sheldon Howe's How to Be Disciplined, the message is clear. Discipline is not a trait you're born with, and it's not a punishment you endure. It's a skill, quietly built in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the small actions you repeat consistently, and in the promises you keep to yourself. Every late night you push through, every small habit you maintain, and every task you complete despite resistance compounds over time. This is what separates those who drift through life from those who build momentum toward the future they want. Discipline isn't dramatic, it's invisible progress, but its impact is undeniable. Now think about your own life. The moments you believe are insignificant, the 5 minutes you spend scrolling, the tasks you keep postponing, the commitments you quietly break. These are the moments that define your future. Sheldon Howe reminds us that your identity is shaped not by perfection, but by persistence. You have the power to start small, to take one action today, and to prove to yourself that your word matters. The future you want isn't built by motivation alone. It's built by the choices you make consistently, even when you don't feel like it. Discipline is the bridge between who you are now and who you want to become. So here's your call to action. Don't wait for the perfect moment, don't wait to feel motivated, and don't wait to be ready. Start with one small promise to yourself and keep it. Make one decision today that your future self will thank you for. Share your journey, track your progress, and hold yourself accountable. Every small step, every act of self-respect brings you closer to the life you envision. Discipline isn't about restriction. It's about freedom, identity, and self-respect. And the best time to begin building it is now.